New wine is oftentimes an allusion to a new teaching. And in that context, it's about disciples. And Yeshua wanted new disciples for himself that would be able to step outside of the cultural boundary markers, step outside of the cultural norms to say, what can we do to build disciples for the kingdom of heaven? And we have to be sensitive to that, particularly for those of us that come from a Gentile background. In Philippians 3:4, although I myself might have confidence in the flesh, and Paul's talking about and contrasting his Pharisaic Judaism with his also call in Messiah Yeshua. If anyone else has a mind to put confidence in the flesh, I far more. There were those that were trying to speak against Paul. He says, and this is who I am, verse 5, circumcised on the 8th day, of the nation of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin. In other words, Paul was not a convert. Paul was raised Jewish. His parents were Jewish. Not many Jewish people at that time knew their tribal ancestry heritage, but Paul even knew that he was from the tribe of Benjamin. A Hebrew of Hebrews. As to the Torah, a Pharisee. In other words, Paul's understanding of the Torah was with a Pharisaical mindset, and this is how Paul practiced the Torah. In fact, much of the laws of the Torah being understood in regard to Pharisaical Judaism lent itself to a lenient perspective upon Gentiles. And I think that this is all a part of why God chose Paul the Pharisee. As to a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the Kahillah, of the assembly. Is that Paul was so steeped in his background that he was willing to persecute the church and bring those to death. We know that Paul stood at his feet were Stephen's garments, where Stephen was martyred. Paul was an overseer, possibly even of Stephen's death. Can you imagine the greeting that Paul and Stephen had in heaven? Can you imagine what that might have looked like?